and the importance of the numbers in Philadelphia specifically. And now we're keeping on with the numbers, this time looking at our local economy. Global stocks have rallied on the back of speculation that U.S. presidential hopeful Joe Biden is in the lead at the U.S. polls. While markets have largely priced in a Biden win, on Wednesday, South Africa saw the rand go from 15 rand 43 cents to 15 rand 80 against the US dollar. Market analysts are cautious about predicting an outright winner in the US elections, but some economists have clearly staked their hopes on Joe Biden for the White House. Many publications, such as USA Today, have for the first time endorsed a presidential candidate in Joe Biden, the biggest publication in Europe. German's Der Spiegel has long dubbed Trump a problem child. But for South Africa, a Biden win will be good for local markets. Joining us to discuss what this presidential run has done for the global and emerging markets, as well as the South African economy, is developmental economist, senior researcher at the University of Pretoria and contributor for the Democratic Development Program, Professor Jacob Moshokoa. Jason, thank you for your time. Always a pleasure chatting to you. Now, the rand seems to be gaining those levels from pre-COVID-19 lockdown. What has added to this amazing reaction to the rand?
Thanks, Jacob. I think this was expected, as we've seen. In fact, when there was some expectation that this was going to be a very tight race between Joe Biden and the current incumbent president. What has happened, though, is that in the last few days we've seen Joe Biden making serious gains ahead towards the 270 mark. Now, the immediate response as far as the South African market is concerned, as you rightly point out, is that we've seen the rand appreciate with about 0.24%, the highest since March. And the reason is that with perhaps let me background that the United States current president now, Donald Trump, is friendly to markets, and businesses feel much more comfortable with him. When you consider a Democratic win, of which Joe Biden is the ticket holder there, we are likely to see much more spending in the United States towards social safety nets. What that does is that investors are not usually very comfortable with that kind of spending. Now, in that same context, then, the US dollar begins to depreciate because US investors are not very confident about Joe Biden compared to Donald Trump. The more the US dollar depreciates, the more then the rand appreciates. But also keep in mind, Joe Biden is likely to be a much more diplomatic president with China, and South African market is very exposed to China. So if the Chinese economy is doing well, they will provide a ready market for South African products, of which we do serious exports there, upwards of 100 billion per year rand of exports into China. So those are some trends that we expect the South African market to respond much more favorably. One, in terms of the US dollar depreciation, and secondly, opening up or at least the better trade relations with China, which then ripple effects or affects South African market positively.
Prof. Musyoka, let's take a look at some of the trade agreements that South Africa has with America, specifically taking a look at NAFTA. Donald Trump, first thing he did in 2016 when he became president was withdraw from the North American free trade agreement, South Africa being a major export partner and import partner with NAFTA. Should we expect a shift in our trade relationship with America as South Africa, should it be the case that Joe Biden walks through the White House doors on the 20th of January?
Indeed. South Africa is a small open market economy, and what we have seen under Donald Trump is a very America-first kind of policy, of which all of these kind of trade withdrawals, and not just around the trade blocs, but the World Health Organization and all of these other, the climate change pact. So he's really withdrawn in the context of America first, that kind of nationalistic wave that was sweeping across the world in the last few years. So South Africa has, given that South Africa is an it's an open economy, a small open economy, we do rely a lot on the global markets and how the global market, and the US, by the way, is one of the top 5 export markets for South Africa, alongside Germany and China and Botswana as well, and the UK, where we export a lot of fruits. So if you consider the fact that these kinds of trade agreements, they usually reduce duties, and therefore we are able to make much more gains when these trade agreements are in effect. The fact that Joe Biden is likely to create, again, a much better diplomatic environment around the trade agreements. We are likely to have benefits, including NAFTA. There were threats, of course, about South Africa not following through with intellectual property rights. As we know, there's been that bit of contest between South Africa and the United States. And I suppose that we are going to see a much more diplomatic move around all of those kinds of trade agreements. That is certainly good for South Africa, given that we do rely on the global market for exports.
Professor, let's talk about investor confidence here now. When you look at how we look, or the trajectory of the rand at the moment, does this encourage more investors to look at South Africa as an investing haven or a place to safely invest, considering what will happen in the US?
The rand depreciation or appreciation or rand fluctuation is one factor in a sea of a range of factors. And yes, it does provide some positive sentiments as far as investment is concerned, but keep in mind, these investments or these sentiments are externally driven. We need to also look at the fact that as much as the global economy's conditions are going to change, the global economy is likely to recover. Certainly under Joe Biden, we think that if there's going to be stimulus in the U.S., stimulus package, we are likely to see that drug or kind of boost the global economy. And then South African market, of course, is likely to benefit from that, as I indicated. Now, the link with that to investors in South Africa is that that is an external stimulation of investment in South Africa. But we have serious domestic issues that we still have to deal with, one of which is Eskom, for example. We have low skills, we have labor rigidity, high levels of unemployment. There are some movements towards structural reforms in South Africa. As we might know, the debate is ongoing, but the unions, of course, we expect them to resist that firmly. We don't see the conclusion coming soon. So the domestic factors are very critical for us to balance out the external factors, of which we know now the conditions are becoming better internationally, but locally we still have a lot of work to do for investors to feel much more confident that government is doing what it needs to do to create better conditions for business.
Prof. Musyoka, in closing, by Tuesday on the 3rd of November, when elections started, the rand was rallying at 16 rand 20 to the dollar. Today it's sitting at 15 rand 60. That's a shift of 60 cents. In any given week, that would be considered a dramatic shift. When should we expect the rand to rally back up to its norm against the dollar? Or should we expect it to hold should Donald Trump leave office and Joe Biden eventually win this ticket?
The expectations are that because if Joe Biden, of which now he's got a clear path to the White House, and given his policies, those policies are likely to continue, although there's going to be quite some filibustering from the Republicans. But Joe Biden's policies are going to be much more friendly, and if they are, we do expect some reasonably favorable time for the rand, not just for the next week or so, but perhaps for the next couple of months, if, of course, supposing that our domestic issues are well sorted. But we are going to see the rand is going to hold because it's reacting to the potential policies.
Oh, it seems we may have lost Professor Musyoka over there. But yeah, there's a lot to look forward to as far as the markets are concerned. I'm excited to see what the rand does in the next coming weeks, as Prof. Musyoka there says that he expects it to hold for a while, should the Joe Biden lead sustain. Favorable policies to South Africa, diplomatic approach. A lot to talk about in that IP bill that's on Cyril Ramaphosa's desk, which really has been held up by America for the most part. Exciting times in the next couple of weeks.
And that's why I refer to investor confidence. I mean, if you look at the rand holding at that number, then it means investors will look at South Africa. Maybe they want to put their money where it will stabilize or grow them more money. So I think it's a good place to be for South Africa. I really hope things work out quite well when it comes to that presidential race in the USA.